watching it, I was going, shit. Because what I just saw in South Africa, too, had freaked me out so much. South Africa's a fucked up place.
What's fucked up about South Africa?
It's the most...
When you say South Africa's a fucked up place,
Yeah.
after you just got done talking about Liberia.
Well, South Africa, because it's the richest country in Africa, and it's always heralded as sort of, look at what's happening in South Africa. It's so good and so great and whatever. And we actually went down to shoot there, and, it's incredibly corrupt. The police captains are always being arrested. But basically, it's completely incredibly racist, incredibly segregated. People living behind barbed wire and electric fences. There's a famous book called Disgrace, which won, I don't know, the Nobel Prize or the Booker Prize, one of them, about a guy from Cape Town, a professor who gets disgraced by fucking one of his students, and goes out into the townships, and they end up getting their farm taken over, and his daughter gets raped, and he gets set on fire and all this shit. And I was reading that before going there, and I was like, well, that's just crazy shit. It doesn't happen. And when you're there, you're like, oh, that happens every fucking day. Like, it's full fucking on. And so as we were shooting the Afrikaans neighborhoods. And the Afrikaans are fighting, the coloreds, who are the mixed races, who are fighting the blacks, who are fighting the whites. And then the whites are just sort of in their compounds, electric wire and security and machine guns. And you're just like, holy fuck, dude. I'm like, why don't you go to Australia? Why wouldn't you just get the fuck out? Like,
so they choose to stay for what reason? Yeah. Why?
Well, they're African. They're like, we're African. We've been here,
since the Dutch settled.
Exactly. And so
when was that? What year was that?
In the 1600s. And there was the Bantu migration and the Zulu migration, and they both sort of happened relatively late because South Africa is sort of hard to get to from the rest of the continent. And then so the Dutch got there, a bit after, like 400 years or something. Now, don't everyone say that I'm not. I don't know the actual exact times, but so they've been there a long time, and but there's definitely a strategy of sort of and intimidation, and there's a lot of institutionalized rape like there, and whenever you see that, like when you're like when rape is part of the equation and home takeovers and all this shit, I'm out. Like that's it's just like not on.
So the crime rate in South Africa is just ridiculous compared to the rest of the world.
Well,
it's just another example of Africa. Africa just as a whole is pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, but
it's the craziest spot on earth, right?
But South Africa, you're sort of like, well, South Africa is like, I always thought of it as sort of, Canada in Africa, because it's just sort of, it's richer, and, it has these sort of, modern cities, and, just sort of, and I grew up in the area, but I'm not going to play Sun City and, fuck apartheid and all that shit, which I agree with, fuck apartheid and all that stuff. It just, now when you go there, it's so segregated, and so there's so much hatred and so much fucking violence and crazy shit going on every day, and people driving in Mad Max electrified cars with machine guns and living behind electric fences and shit, and you're like, fuck, is this where it's headed? Because this is the whole thing about Occupy Wall Street. If you get to have too much discrepancy with money, so these people have tons of money and they're living behind barbed wire, electric wire compounds with security guards and machine guns, and the other dudes are out fucking eating rats and smileys and whatever, then you're like, okay, well, there's going to be a fight. There's going to be continual, I'm going to take what you have, When we were in Somalia, it's interesting because we went there with this story that was the pirate stock exchange, right, which we thought is a funny idea, because what it is